outside, and my mum was like, just wait outside, I need to talk with the doctor. So as we were just waiting, we waited for about, I don't know, like, it seemed like forever. It must have been like, you know, like 10 minutes. But it seemed like forever. And then after a while, our mum finally came out of the doctor's room, and she came out with like eyes that were like this big. Like, she looked like a goldfish, and it was red and swollen, and I could tell she'd been crying. She didn't say anything like in the car ride home. It was a silent car ride home. And when we got home finally, she said, girls, I have something to say. The doctors actually said I've had cancer. And you know, being 7 years old, we had no idea what cancer was. Like, I promise, I really thought that cancer was something like a flu. And I'm like, get over it, Mum. Just have some Panadol, get some rest, you know, you'll get better. And I really thought that it was something very trivial and very, not a big deal. But obviously, as we were growing up, going to school, she started doing chemotherapy, which is like the therapy that you do for cancer. And the side effects were so traumatic. Like, some of the stuff that we saw, like because of the medication, she lost all of her hair. And she had like such beautiful silky hair. Like, it was amazing. But then she lost it all. And she had to eventually wear a wig. And you know, as a grown woman, at that time, because we were so young, we probably didn't understand, you know, what it took, what kind of courage it took for her to have to wear a wig as a woman. But, you know, that's just what she had to do because of this sickness. You know, another thing was like, you know, she'd be like swelling constantly, like she'd bloat like this, and then all of a sudden she'd just become skin and bones. And people were like, they had trouble recognizing who she was. It was that severe. Eventually, the cancer, it was breast cancer. It spread everywhere. It just went crazy, and it spread to her lungs. And she had like lung cancer. She had water fluid building up in her lungs, so she was always wheezing as she was breathing. It spread to her knee, and she was walking with a limp all the time. She was walking with a limp. It spread to her eye, and she was going blind in one eye, which meant that she couldn't drive anymore. It changed her life in so many ways, and I think it would have been so painful for her because she couldn't fulfill her role as a mum. And for us as children, it was really difficult to watch our mum suffer so much. I think it actually hit us when we were in high school. We walked home from school every day, and when we got to our front door, it was always like what's she going to be like today? Because sometimes she was fine. Before we knock on the door, we're like, is she going to be fine or is she going to be sick? Sometimes she's walking around making us snacks and we forgot that she was sick. And other times she was lying in bed and groaning in pain and we couldn't do anything for her. And that was really tough for us. And eventually she got this ugly, big, scary oxygen machine to help her breathe because it got pretty bad. And home was such a difficult place to be. And we grew up in church, so we grew up at Sunday school, and they always taught us one thing. It was, God is good. All the time, God is good. And for us, to be honest, this didn't make sense. If God is so good, why are bad things happening to us? If He loves me, why are these things happening? I didn't understand. And, you know, we used to write in our little journals, God, fix her. We used to threaten God and be like, you can fix her, fix her. And we've got journals and journals full of these prayers, and nothing was happening. And we were quite bitter at God. If you ask to be frank, we were quite angry and bitter at God. And then in year 9, so we must have been like 15 years old, there was a church camp on, and we honestly did not want to go for any other reason than to just play with our friends. So we went and signed up, and we went to this church camp. And it was a 3-day camp. On the last night, they had a time of prayer. And Janice and I, we honestly didn't care about praying or whatever, because we honestly we didn't believe or wasn't even sure that God was real, or that even if He was, that He even cared about us. So on this last night, as we were kneeling and just like sitting there, not expecting anything, I looked around, and everyone around us, they were just bawling their eyes out. They were crying, weeping, and you know, it wasn't even just like it was they were crying like that. And I was like, what's wrong with them? Why are they crying? And it was just like, I was confused. But it's funny, because as I was watching them, something in my heart knew that whatever they were feeling, whatever they were encountering, whatever they were experiencing right now, it was real. Like, they were having a real, genuine encounter with this God. And watching them, I was just like, okay, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray this one prayer. God, if you're real, if you really are real, then show up to me like you're showing up to these crazy people over here. If you're real, I need you to show me that you're real right now. And you know, it sounds like an arrogant prayer. It sounds so arrogant. But that's what's so amazing about this God, because guess what? By the end of that night, Janice and I, it's so weird. As I was just waiting there for God to show up, I can't explain it in words that would make sense, because it was so out of this world. But all of a sudden, I just felt this peace come over my heart. And I can speak to Janice as well, because we talked about this, and we said that we share the same thing. But we felt this peace come over our hearts, and all those years of confusion, bitterness, anger, like having no answers to these difficult situations, all of a sudden in one instance, it was gone. And I just felt God say, Janice and Sonia, I love you. I created you. Just trust me. Trust me. And that moment was like the best moment of our lives. We decided to give our lives to Jesus. And we said, you know, Jesus, if you are real and if you really did create us and you love us, then we're going to trust you from this day on. And that was the day that we gave our life to Jesus, and we've been walking with him ever since. And it's been the best decision we've ever made. Before that camp even finished, we got a phone call from our dad. And he said, Janice and Sonia, you have to come back immediately. Mum's in hospital. And for us, we're like, Mum's always in hospital. She always goes in and comes out, and, you know, things are usually fine. But when we got there and we saw my mum's face, something seemed different. And soon enough, the doctor came and gave us news that she only had 2 weeks to live. Now, as 15-year-olds, girls, we didn't know how to think and feel about this news. I mean, I had so many things to say to her. I had so many things to ask her, so many things to learn. I don't know how to cook. There were so many things that had yet to be done with my mum, but she was going to be gone so soon, and we felt grief. And so Sonia and I held hands and went to the toilet to pray. And we prayed, God, if you're the real same God that we met at this church camp, if you really love us like you said, we need you right now. We don't know what to do. We need you. We're about to lose my mum. And we prayed. And I kid you not, this peace of God came and it just filled our hearts. Can't even explain it. And after that, we didn't cry. It was the last time we cried, because we wanted to be strong for my mum. And after that, we went to my mum and we started having crazy conversations like this. No kidding. Mum, you are so lucky. You're going to heaven. You get to see Jesus. Can you say hello to him for us? And she was like, yeah. And she goes, you guys, don't worry. You'll be joining me there. And we had such amazing, hopeful, encouraging conversations like that. There was no sadness, no fear. So for the next few days, we didn't go anywhere, because we wanted to spend every single moment we had left with our mum. So we slept at the hospital next to her bed. And one morning I woke up, and I remember seeing her. She was already up, and she was lying there watching us. And she went, good morning. And she said, come over here. I have something to say. So Janice and I went to her bedside and we said, Mum, what is it? And she said, I want you to remember this, and I want you never to forget this for the rest of your life. There are going to be times when you really struggle, and there are going to be times that are really difficult in life, but always choose to rejoice. And I'm like, I think she's got to be crazy. How do you rejoice in a situation like this? How do you rejoice? I know that she wanted to teach us something very valuable, and I wanted to understand what it meant to rejoice in a situation like this. But my flesh was so weak, I couldn't understand how to rejoice in a situation where Mum was going to pass away. And then at that moment, she had a CD player next to her at a bedside table. And she was such a worshipper. She loved to sing. She had a beautiful voice. And it was playing a Korean worship CD. It was on repeat, and she just continued to listen to it all the time. And then at that moment, as she was sharing that with us, a Korean worship song came on. And it was in Korean, so the lyrics translate, "Lord, here I am. My heart, my body, I give it to you. Use me as I am. Send me as you desire." And she was so weak by this point. Like, her body was shutting down, and her hands and her feet were going blue because the blood circulation wasn't, it wasn't working anymore. She couldn't even eat. She couldn't digest food. She couldn't even drink water. That's how weak she was. So she was like barely talking at this point. And as soon as she heard this song playing, all of a sudden, she like gained this strength out of nowhere. She like raised her hands high up in the air, and she like, with this beaming smile, she started to sing along to this worship song. And honestly, that image has been imprinted in my mind like for an eternity, because she demonstrated to us what it means to rejoice in a situation where you're facing death. She was still able to rejoice. And we want to share this song with you tonight. It's people ask us, what's your favorite song? And we easily say it's this Korean worship song, because it will always be a reminder in life just how to rejoice in any situation. So here it is.